Welcome aboard the Omni-bus to Miscellanea. I'm Cyber and I'll be your overseer today. Before we get started, if you like what we do, please share with your friends and family, and feel free to check out any of our other episodes. Word of mouth goes a very long way in helping us reach a wider audience, and in turn helps all those who've worked with us. Your subscription will not only provide us with the resources to continue creating the content you love, but will also bring you access to exclusive perks like our first tier at $1 with a 7-day free trial. You're able to submit your stories for consideration. $5 tier, you get a shout out, ad-free episodes, and sometimes vote on the next episode to release. We understand that not everyone's able to support us in this way. We appreciate all forms of support, whether it's engaging with our content or sharing our work. Lastly, if you'd like to be a part of an episode or any of our other projects, feel free to contact us at projectcyclone.com and show us what you can do. More information can be found on the website. That's projectcyclone.com. projectcyclone.com. With all that being said, our next stop: war, destruction, and monsters. What more could anyone want? Written by MoonlitSintari. The Hunt.
My vision was a void. Endless black was the extent at which I could see. No light was present even when I opened my eyes. But that was how we preferred it. I opened my eyes, and again there was no light outside. On the inside, there was a hum and chopping sound as many blades cut through the air to string us along on our journey.
Closing in on drop zone Almaha is now in sight.
The pilot relayed to us. My heart pumped faster and faster as the seconds drew by. No matter how many breaths I took, it would not stop the impending fear of death.
It's been quite some time since the new incarnate has been spotted, hasn't it?
Correct. Dark Force hasn't been mobilized outside of Erasmus in many years. Lights on.
All at once, weapon-mounted torches were aimed down at the sand. Ahead of us, a large spotlight beamed down, drawing a path to our landing zone. What was I thinking? Getting cold feet now. There was no backing out of the mission. I was trained well, and I knew what they were asking of me. My heart eased, and I regained control of my jittery hands. The 6 of us hopped onto the sand on the outskirts of the city as we were just about to land. Similarly, another helicopter landed just next to ours and unloaded just as many men.
A backup team is on their way, but we're expected to capture the incarnate without them.
A final order was commanded, and the 2 shock helicopters lifted off without us. Now, there really was no chance for me to chicken out. That steeled my heart, now more than anything. We were trained and ready. I could do this. Torches lit up the walls as we rounded corners and shifted through alleys, guided by an overhead white beam. We arrived at the Incarnate's suspected location and circled it.
Alright, Alpha Team, we're taking the front. Beta, you take around the back and above.
Alpha, you sure this is the right place? Over.
Yeah. Latitude -67.54917. Longitude 114.57661. MLS Construction Warehouse. This is the place. Over.
Copy. Over and out.
Everything was still and quiet. An unnerving aura spread throughout us, as no one had ever heard of a quiet incarnate before. With hesitance, we followed the plan anyhow. Gas was dropped into the warehouse from any opening we could find, and within minutes, it filled the whole thing with billowing smoke.
Beta, over.
Copy. Over.
Anything? Over.
No, still not getting anything. Over.
Copy. Over and out.
For minutes, the team looked at each other with a sense of dread and pulled out our sealed masks. Now, with renewed shaking in my hands, I too put on my mask. We were going to breach. Most of Alpha Team formed around one side of the wooden door, while some of us were on the other. Our task was to open it for the others to smoothly enter. But something was off. My hand shook on the handle, as if it felt a presence on the other side. Soon, we were cleared for action, and my heart rate once again began to build. 3, 2, 1, go! My heart rate was spiking, but it was building up my confidence. Through shaking fingers, I twisted the knob to open the door. But there was no need. The door suddenly became lighter and flung off its hinges, with part of the beige mud brick wall soon following. I was knocked to the corner of the building as my squad mates were launched through the air. Soon after, white nauseous gas poured out of the side of the building alongside the scales and feathers of the incarnate. I was scrambling to find my weapon somewhere along the ground as the dazed and broken members of my team were cut down. 2 handheld crescent-shaped blades cut through the heavy, sweat-soaked gear of my allies before turning to me. My heart stopped as I locked eyes with the sneer of the beast. An electric cord then snapped into the wall beside its head, causing its feathers to raise and its gaze to be focused above. The tip of my finger then hit the grip of the weapon and launched a cable as well. Though it hit, the hooks didn't properly latch into its skin. Even with a mere glance, however, it was enough electricity to sting and drive it off. Through the winding, narrow streets, the monster fled, and through those streets, we had to follow. I clambered to my feet and retracted my cable from the dirt. It wound back inside with an intense ferocity not even the incarnate could match.
You're the new team leader. Call the copter. I'm calling ours.
Startled, I looked over to my team members' bodies, my eyes stopping on the previous leader. What about their bodies? No one's even checked if any of them are alive, I asked.
The bodies can be picked up later. Even if some are alive, they won't be for long.
I was then handed my team's radio, and that was as much quarrel as I was allowed to give. As the 2 helicopters landed, 2 members of the other squad joined me. We took off and found the incarnate making its way toward the edge of the city in a straight line. We set our lights on it, and then made a swift gliding motion down close to the ground and in front of its path, as the other helicopter did the same on the other side. Both teams that flanked him fired our cords into the creature's upper body. Our cables bounced and landed somewhere closer to its abdomen. The other side fired their cables as well, however, weren't as lucky, with all of them bouncing off the harder scales and feathers on its back. Nonetheless, the 3 of us delivered jolts of lightning into its flesh, causing it to spasm for the moment. For that moment, I really thought we had it. We were going to take down one of the few remaining incarnates that plagued Derma. Then, the 2 cables which sat beside me were yanked, and into the darkness below they fell. Instinctively, I unlatched mine as its arm went for it, just missing the incredibly speedy cable as it wound itself back into my weapon. With another deathly stare into my eyes, it leaped for a back alley and bolted toward another part of the city. We followed it from the sky like nothing happened until it smashed through a cathedral wall and out of sight. Naturally, we sat down and made our way inside. Both helicopters loomed above with searchlights circling the outside. We crept into the dark, open space that acted like a familiar void. On creaking steps, we spread out past chairs and tables a century old. My torch shook more than the others, but not noticeably so. There then came a creak and a bang which sputtered light around like a swarm of angry bees. I slowly traced the direction of the sound until my weapon locked on a door. Soon, it seemed we were all in agreement on the direction of the sound, as all lights focused on mine. I edged myself towards the door and pulled the pin from my unused gas grenade. It rolled under the wood and filled the room beyond with smoke. As white clouds seeped through the cracks, an unsettling feeling swept over me again. The gas didn't work last time we tried it, and I suspected it wouldn't this time either, even if it was in that room, which I now doubted. I scanned once more with my light all around the room. There wasn't any space we hadn't looked at before. There weren't any more doors or walls it could have hid behind, and then it hit me. Slowly, I angled the light up and up until I found out the cathedral had rafters. It paused for a moment, and then it came. Over a ton of dense muscle and steel crushed one of the five and cackled a raspy voice all the while. The rasp then faded as it noticed its predicament. With one leg caught in the floorboards, we spread out evenly and plunged our cords from every angle. The room lit up with blue light as smoke rose from the points of contact. A deafening roar was emitted as it slumped closer and closer to the floor. The sound of a beast defeated. The electricity stopped, and we all waited. The other team leader brought out his radio and reported its state to his pilot. While waiting for orders, I heard another creak. Then a low-toned groan. And lastly, the snap of wood. The floor suddenly gave way, and I cut the cord from my weapon. I landed on the other side of a stone wall, while my sparking cable snaked over the top. My tailbone hurt immensely, and my head felt dizzy. I removed the mask and breathed in what I thought would be a fresh supply of air, but was now smoke from the flames on the other side of the wall. A burning piece of dried floorboard then fell from above, almost crushing me. I made my way down a corridor while pulling out my radio to alert the pilots. As I went about to speak, I heard the order.
Permission to use emergency payload authorized.
My eyes went wide, and I double-timed it down the corridor. Bricks rained down from above with smoldering wood as I reached the stairs to a cellar door. I pushed open one side, then the other, and collapsed just before getting fully outside. I lay there for a time, absorbing the fresh air that smelled like gunpowder. After my moment of delusion, I found the searchlights in the sky again and heard something similar to
44 missile payloads expended.
Come from my radio. My heart had thought it was over, as it was merely focused on the absorption of fresh oxygen. But somehow, I knew it wasn't. I followed the white beams with my eyes, which stopped somewhere inside what remained of the cathedral. Some kind of brass dinging pierced my ears, and I flinched. By the time I opened my eyes, I only caught a glimpse of a fireball careening down towards Omaha, followed by a large bell. The remaining beam then cast less and less light as it retreated higher into the sky. What emerged from the building was now, most likely, less than a ton in weight. It billowed out smoke from its nostrils and flared what remained of its feathers. Scales withered and fell off its body as it staggered toward the desert with one less crescent-shaped blade. The lash from a cord was still hooked into its torso, with a gash wound from what looked like a knife mirroring it on the other side. Although I expected my heart to sink and my limbs to shake when it scanned over me again, they did not. Instead of a cynical glance, I was treated to the maw of fulfillment. My target trotted to the meager fence, which kept out the open desert, then stopped. The sound of far-off searing wind was picked up by both of us. The heavens. 4 more explosions landed just beyond the fence and blew back the incarnate. What landed after didn't bring the sound of chopping blades or determined men, but a simple thump and a wall of kicked up sand. The other was a metal, feather-clad creature bearing the words shock across its body. Either side of its wings began to simmer out, and in a dazzling display of mechanical brilliance, sharp feathers rose up to tip them instead. Half-bird, half-machine feet sprung from the sand they planted themselves in and carried the creature closer to its target. In a gasp that didn't come from me, a raspy, dead voice questioned back a name I had never heard. It opened up a foreign dialogue to the abomination, and yet didn't meet a response. Severe loss and sadness carried through the words I couldn't understand. I had no understanding of the dialect, and yet somehow understood fully. I understood the grief and despair, the years seen and loved ones lost, the honors won and victories previously achieved. And yet, the mechanical abomination's beautiful eyes didn't change. Its stride grew longer and its feathers extended until it was on top of the defeated hero centuries old. The fight was not fair in the slightest. Large slashes formed quicker than I could see strikes swung, and it was done. The incarnate collapsed into a pool of his own blood, as he did not once attempt to strike his opponent. Chopper blades could soon be heard far off, and they landed, bringing fresh men in to collect their prize. I clambered out of the ruins and into the spotlights, where weapons were immediately trained on me, then back onto the incarnate. Much after that was a blur, which strung the incarnate along. Beside us flew the mimicry of a real jet. The sun began to crest dunes far away, and I was asked a question to my superior officer and answered. If I get to work with it, I'm in.
The Hunt was written by MoonlitSintari. You can find them as MoonlitSintari on Reddit, Wattpad, and Twitter. All of their stories are set in the Approxima universe, creating a connected narrative across different times and locations. This universe primarily encompasses sci-fi, fantasy, and action with occasional forays into other genres. They're currently developing a book series within the universe, and would be more than happy to answer any questions about their stories. The narrator was played by Kane Cheesman. You can find Dylan DylanKaneVO.wordpress.com, Twitter @DylanKaneVO, or YouTube @DylanKaneVO. The pilot and officer beta were played by John Cross, who can be found on Instagram @JohnJCross or IMDb as John Cross. This episode was edited and composed by Cy Nelson, who can be found on Reddit @Cy_Cyclone and Instagram @Cyber_Cyclone. The producers for this episode were Cy Nelson and Teddy BBBear, who can be found on Instagram @TDY_BBBear. All links and credits can be found in the description. As for our bus, you can always find a stop on the corner between somewhere and nowhere. Our next episode releases April 8th. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay cozy. We hope to see you soon.